Hey, I wanted to continue my testimony. So, there's a lot more that happened before I ever went to prison or any of the things. It was not the first time God has saved me. It's also not the first time He's called me to do anything. Doggies. So, I guess it really all comes back to when I was 7. When I was 7, I used to go to Parkgate Community Church with my grandma and my sister. And one day, the pastor at the time, his name was Pastor Duncan, in Pasadena. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but he come down off the out of the pulpit and come down to the pews, and he was like, "Hey, you're gonna be a great preacher one day." And I'm 7 years old, right? I go home and I'm like, "God, please, no, don't make me do that. I'm 7. I'm a kid. I can't do that. Blah blah blah." And God gives you a choice. To this day, I wish I had chosen to do what He asked, chosen to chase after Him instead of being afraid to walk into that. When I was 7, I didn't know any better. But still, you get a choice. Later that year, at 7 years old, I was on probation for the first time. I was shoplifting a lot and running away from home and doing all the crazy things. Got put on Ritalin. Life got bad. Got abusive. Extremely abusive. To the point that I smashed out the window in my bedroom and ran away for 2 days. My life completely went nuts after I told God no. And the Bible does say if you walk away from God, that He'll give you over to your sin. Regardless of what people think or don't think, I know what I experienced. My choices led to a literal life of crime. I ended up, I loved Jesus my whole life. I was resentful, though, at the fact that just because I didn't want to, quote unquote, be a preacher at 7, which somehow my child brain thought was how it was going to work. And I was resentful. And I thought, since I'm 7, I shouldn't have had to, or I was 7 at the time, I shouldn't have had to face any kind of consequences for that. But you do face consequences for your choices. Good consequences, bad consequences, surprising ones. Like, it doesn't just magically go away. The point is this. At the age of 23, I'm sitting in prison. Or sorry, not prison. I'm sitting in jail. About to sign for, I thought, 10 years in prison. Because I was actually hit with 32 felony charges. Only 2 of them stuck. And I ended up signing for just 2 felonies. One in 2014, 15, and one like a year later. Either way, I just signed for those. And I ended up signing for 10 years probation. God really saved me on that. But there's more to it. There was a testing. Before I ever signed for anything, when I still thought I was going to prison, I remember sitting on the rec yard in the county jail, and I was thinking about how God called me when I was young, and how I told Him no. And I chose to do it, like, my way anyway. I'm gonna go this way. It's a lot of sun. Nah, you know what? I already walked away from the sun once. That's funny, right? Not really. Okay. But I was sitting there in the rec yard. And I had thought about all the night before how I walked away from God when I was young, and I was like, all right, fine. God, regardless of how things go from here on out, if I'm going to prison, I guess I'll go to prison and serve you. The next day I'm out on that rec yard, and just out of nowhere I look up and I say, God, I'm gonna start trusting you again. True story. True story. The second I look up, these two white guys come walking up to me out of nowhere, and they're like, we heard you were a snitch. Now I didn't know what they were talking about, because I have no reason to be doing that. And I ended up finding out some details later about why they thought that, because apparently I had gotten snitched on and that guy was in jail, and he was trying to make sure he was okay. Anyways, long story short, for the first time in my life, when I took that butt whooping, I didn't fight back. For the very first time in my life. And this is only two guys. And I grew up in Pasadena, Texas as a white man. Well, white boy. Getting jumped by 7 to 8 Mexicans every single day, walking to school, walking home. Every single day. So fighting more than one person. Nobody said I was gonna win any, crazy fights. But sit there and take it, I would not. I refused. But I gave up my life to God, and the second I chose to trust Him again, I decided that. It was put to the test by the devil. And that devil really thought he had me too. I ended up walking up to these guys and forgiving them. And I quote, they said, well, one of them, the one I stretched out my hand to shake their hand, and I said, hey man, I forgive you, it's all good. He smacks my hand away and he says, I don't want your forgiveness. Now something in me told me that there would be some kind of repercussions for that. And I start walking in a circle around the rec yard. I'm dripping blood out of my nose and stuff. But I'm dripping blood out of my nose. I'm getting it all over the rec yard, right? I get over to the corner where they had beat me up, and I'm still walking. I notice there's this giant, big old pile of blood sitting there. And a little tiny bit of it was still there when I went back to that same jail 10 years later. About that big. It wasn't blood anymore, it was just a dark spot, but I remembered. Anyways, guards saw it on camera, saw them beat me up. They come and get me, and they're like, hey, do you want to press charges on this guy? I said, no. I already forgave him. I'm not worried about it. God's got me. Well, the county ended up pressing charges on those guys and then had them transferred to a real rock and roll jail where they would have to be fighting constantly. And it wasn't anything on my part, but that was showing me that God could take care of me, and I didn't need to worry about self-preservation, because God would provide for me and provide for me and preserve me Himself. So I end up going to the courthouse to sign for time. I was given a rehab, good old Synacor in Deer Park, Texas. I thought it was a miracle then. I'm signing for this 10 years probation right there, and I'm like, I remember these exact words. I said, God, where am I going to be in 10 years?